Hey everybody, I'm Brian with Knox Company, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to change out the flush valve in your toilet. So if you don't have yourself a little helper like I do here, you can click on the link below in the description and you can have one sent right to your house. But here we got one right from the box store here at home, and you can see it's a 2-inch flush valve. That's because the toilets here at our house are 2 inches. They come in two different sizes. It's either 2-inch or 3-inch. One way to identify which box you're looking at has the part that you want is that the boxes will have the image and color of whichever piece it is. There's 3 or 4 components inside of a toilet in the fill tank, and there's a bunch of different boxes all sitting next to each other. They will be labeled, but they also have an image and color of what is inside that box. So once you have that flush valve in hand, we can now get ready to install it. First thing you want to do is turn the water off. I'll be turning the water off out at the street because in this rental house that we're currently in, they have a mana block system. These things are very finicky, they're very sensitive. They are known to break very easily. And speaking to a plumber, he said it could be weeks and weeks before you get a part in if you can get one, and it's very expensive. So it's better just to turn the water off at the street in our circumstance. But otherwise, you should be able to turn the water off right under the tank at the wall. Now that you have the water shut off, we can flush the toilet, get all that water out of the tank, and then there should still be a little bit, maybe about 1 inch or 2 left in that tank, but that will come out once we remove the fill valve. Now I have made a video of the fill valve. I'll put a link for it here in the top of the video. It's pretty easy to remove and to replace, but essentially you're just gonna loosen the nut underneath on the bottom, disconnect the water line, and then the piece comes right out. Once you have the fill valve removed, now we can start working on the tank. The tank has these 2 bolts that go through it on either side, and you can see it on the image on the box here. We are going to loosen that with the nuts underneath. You're going to loosen both sides, take them all the way off. And then before we remove the tank, we're going to lay down something soft. I like to lay down a towel on top of the seat. That way I can actually pull the tank off and actually lay it flat so I can work on it. Now that we have the tank off, we can actually start removing the old gaskets and all the old pieces that we will be replacing. Once we remove the old bolts, you can see on this one how corroded and nasty they are. This is just going to happen over time. A lot of these toilet parts need to be replaced every 3 to 5 years. So probably the most tricky part of this whole process is removing this large nut on the bottom of the tank here that holds the flush valve on. They do make special tools that will help you remove this thing, but I don't have one of those because I only do this occasionally. So what I figured out was by taking a flathead screwdriver and some type of hammer, and I do try to use like a soft tip hammer, like a rubber mallet. But I will hold the screwdriver at an angle on the edge of that nut, and I'll give it very light taps, and it should come loose after a few attempts. It should come off pretty easy, but if you have to, you might have to actually go and get one of those special tools, or like I said, just take some time and some patience and do the method that I show here. Once you have that nut off, the battle is won. We can now just remove that old valve, and you can see this old one here. It has a lot of corrosion and old water, hard water spots on it. This really affects the way that the flapper valve creates a seal and can make your toilet run. You can waste water, or sometimes you just won't get a good flush. It might be constantly running. We can now just drop in the new flush valve, put on the new nut and gasket that they come with. So I will tighten this thing as hard as I can down by hand, and then I'll give it a little bit of extra with that screwdriver mallet method, or you can even push from the inside of the tank and create pressure on that gasket to release a little bit, and again tighten it down as hard as you can by hand. That should be good enough, but just make sure that you get it tight plus a quarter turn. Once you have the new flush valve in, we can install the new bolts. The bolts will have a washer on the inside of the tank and the bottom of the tank, and there will be a nut and washer that go on this. So you can install these bolts on the tank and they will create a watertight seal. This will be used so that when you put the tank back on and it sits on this large gasket around the nut, that it will compress it down enough, but not too far so where it hits those nuts. And then you're going to put another set of washers and gaskets underneath the base that will secure it together. So just for a review, you're going to have a gasket on the inside, you're going to have a gasket on the bottom of the tank, and a washer and nut. Then you're going to put the tank onto the base, and you're going to have another gasket, washer, and nut. and compress it down enough so that it's even on either side, but you don't need to over tighten it here. This is where most people make the mistake, is they get it as tight as they can and it ends up cracking the toilet or cracking the bowl. So you just need to tighten this thing down enough so that it doesn't wobble too much on top and that it has a pretty snug fit. And again, you can look in between there and see how much space is left. You do want to compress it a little bit, but you do not need to over tighten these. Now that all the hard work's done, we just reinstall that fill valve. Make sure that our flapper and the chain is attached to our flush valve or our flush lever, and then we can go turn the water back on. And just like that, we've installed our flush valve. It's really easy, something you can do. It's a very quick fix for any time your flush may be running or again, not flushing properly, or maybe even having a leak. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button for me. It really helps me out. I tried to keep it straight and to the point and show you all the things that I did to get this flush valve installed. There's more videos on my channel. If you haven't already, hit subscribe and you can find out all kinds of channels on electrical, drywall, any other DIY projects, and even some fun stuff on the family trips that we take. So until then, I'll see you on the next build.